जय जिनेंद्र दोस्तों। चाय यार, बिना चाय की चुस्की के ना आधे इंडिया का दिन ही नहीं शुरू होता है। और बारिश का मौसम हो तो ओ हो, इंडिया प्रैक्टिकली रन्स ऑन टी। एंड इसकी हिस्ट्री इतनी फैसिनेटिंग है ना, आई जस्ट हैड टू मेक अ वीडियो ऑन इट। तो आज के वीडियो में हम 3 चीज डिस्कस करेंगे। ये टी इंडिया आया कैसे? जी हाँ, इंडिया का ओरिजिन नहीं है टी का, बताता हूँ ना क्या है। इंडिया का टी मार्केट कितना बड़ा है एंड चैलेंजेस क्या हैं इंडियन टी मार्केट के। शुरू से शुरू करते हैं। The average Indian drinks 2 cups of tea a day. Even though we are the second largest producer of tea, we end up consuming 80% of it खुद ही। I know coffee is quickly taking over as the world's preferred beverage. मेरे सारे कॉफी पीने वाले दोस्त मुझे चाय के लिए गाली देंगे, but India still is a tea drinking nation. मैं नहीं कह रहा हूँ। 64% ऑफ इंडियाज पॉपुलेशन प्रेफर्स अ टी। इस पे बहुत रिसर्च है, बहुत स्टेटिस्टिक्स है, लिंक मैं डिस्क्रिप्शन में डाल रहा हूँ, मेरे दोस्तों के लिए पहले, आपके लिए बाद। एंड नो, टी hasn't been around forever. It was only in the early 1800s that tea came to India. कैसे एंड क्यों ब्रिटिशर्स ने इंडिया को चाय की आदत लगवा दी, देखते हैं। Before we see how tea came to India, let us understand how tea came into existence. And no, tea was not even born in Britain. It was born in China. हाँ जी, चाय चाइना का माल है। Yes, like most things, this aromatic drink was also first brewed in China, and by pure accident. This tale goes back to 2732 BC. There lived a Chinese emperor and a herbalist named Shen Nung. One fine day, he accidentally left some unknown leaves from a wild tree in boiling water. Result? A very pleasant aroma. So much so that he got curious and began digging into the leaves. Little did he know, he had just discovered the drink that was soon going to take over the world. फिर क्या? Tea's popularity spread across China like wildflower. As tea plantations spread throughout China, tea merchants became rich and elegant tea sets became a wealth status. Tea became so popular in China that a Chinese writer, Lu Yu, wrote his book about tea. Yes, a book dedicated to just tea. After a few years, some Japanese monks brought tea tree seeds from China to Japan on their way back from China pilgrimage. Soon, tea became Japan's favorite drink as well. In fact, Japanese monks had a super interesting way of making tea. Rather than using whole green tea leaves, they used powdered green tea leaves to create a frothy tea drink. Today, we know this drink as matcha. By the 1660s, tea reached Britain. कैसे? जैसे हमारे घर में नहीं होता है, भाभी कहीं नहीं आती हैं तो अपना एक कल्चर लेके आती हैं। In the 1660s, ऐसे ही एक पोर्चुगीज प्रिंसेस मैरिड इनटू द ब्रिटिश रॉयल फैमिली, and along with her came her tea drinking habits. The royal family soon began drinking tea. In no time, tea reached the streets of Britain, and this obsession with tea was draining their treasury. Why? Because tea was being imported from China. खुद का थोड़ी उगाते थे कुछ ये। During that time, the East India Company had a monopoly on tea imports from China. After all, tea was the top item on the country's shopping list. आज भी अगर कोई कंट्री किसी दूसरे कंट्री से कुछ बहुत ज़्यादा इंपोर्ट करता है तो वो ट्राई करता है कि वो उसी कंट्री से कुछ एक्सपोर्ट भी करे। क्यों? ताकि वो बैलेंस ऑफ ट्रेड मेंटेन रहे। बट द प्रॉब्लम वाज दैट चाइना वाज नॉट रियली कीन ऑन इंपोर्टिंग एनीथिंग फ्रॉम ब्रिटेन। दिस meant trouble for the British. They had to do something, and they did. The British finally found a product that China wanted to consume. Opium. अफीम बोलते हैं हम जिसे। It took control of the market for opium in Bengal. It encouraged farmers to grow more and incentivized production. Or maybe they forced them to. Production of opium increased. The British exported it to China, and China got addicted. Tit for tat. Opium imports shot up from 200 chests carrying around 63.5 kg of the drug in 1729 to 1,000 in 1767. That's a 5x jump. and then to 10,000 chests per annum between 1820 to 1830. ऐसा लग रहा है पूरा चाइना ही गंजेड़ी हो गया था. By 1838, the imports rose to 40,000 chests. At one point, the export revenue was enough to fund the tea imports. But alas, this only lasted until China banned the trade of opium due to its addictive properties and health concerns. उन्हें फाइनली रियलाइज हुआ कि ये कितना हानिकारक है उनके हेल्थ के लिए. नाउ द ब्रिटिश वर बैक टू स्क्वायर वन. They could not let their economy die due to a drink. So they turned to smuggling. Yes, the British started smuggling opium into China through country traders. In no time, China had opium addicts again. This worried the Chinese government. So what next? The Opium Wars. Not one, but 2 Opium Wars. This series of the Opium Wars can be a whole new episode. बताना चाहिए हो तो. एंड मैं आपको क्या ही बताऊं, वॉर्स आर एक्चुअली सुपर डिसरप्टिव. हम देख ही रहे हैं ये रशिया और यूक्रेन एंड पैलेस्टीन इजराइल वॉर में. एंड बिल्कुल इसी तरह उस समय ब्रिटिशर्स स्टार्टेड फेसिंग प्रॉब्लम्स. दे डिड नॉट वांट टू डिपेंड ऑन चाइना फॉर टी ऑब्वियसली. अब कंट्रीज जब वॉर कर रही हैं तो थोड़ी वो कंट्री उठा के चाय इधर इंपोर्ट कर रहा होगा और ये कंट्री उधर ओपियम एक्सपोर्ट कर रहा होगा. सो देयर डिपेंडेंसी ऑन चाइना फॉर टी बिकेम अ ह्यूज प्रॉब्लम. एंड उन्हें सोल्यूशन किस में दिखा? India. Now they had to do just one thing: grow tea in India. The only problem? The British knew nothing about tea production. So they saw only way out: chori, theft. The East India Company contracted a Scottish horticulture Robert Fortune to steal Chinese tea practices. Yes, steal. That was their master plan. Copy कर लो, जो कि हमारे स्टार्टअप्स करते ही हैं इंडिया में. और बहुत अच्छा है ना, एग्जीक्यूशन प्ले है, इनोवेशन प्ले की जगह. So Fortune entered China as a Chinese citizen and slowly took note of Chinese tea production practices. And what he discovered in China was fascinating. Fortune discovered that all teas were made from the same plant. It was only different oxidation processes that create different varieties of tea. Now Fortune knew what he had to do. He simply stole some tea plants and sent them to East India Company. Back in India, the British started celebrating. After all, they had found a way to end China's monopoly. They immediately got to work and sowed these seeds of power. But to their surprise, this experiment failed. Turns out, Robert Fortune missed one key element for the proper cultivation of tea: climate. Back in China, Fortune tried even harder. He went to Chinese monks and temples to learn about good quality tea. He learned all about various harvesting techniques and brewing methods. Robert Fortune grew more confident and with all his learnings was preparing for his return back to India. He brought the Da Hong Pao variety of tea, which was the most expensive in all of China. He potted the plants in soil and enclosed them in a glass case. This would help the plants survive the long journey to India without damage. Back in India, the British were eagerly waiting for Fortune's return. These plants were carefully sowed in the foothills of Himalayas. Soon after, they started to sprout and flower. And this marked the foundation of the great Indian tea industry. From Darjeeling to Assam to Himachal Pradesh, India turned out to be the perfect destination for growing tea. By 1888, Indian tea exports to Britain overtook Chinese tea exports. Everything was great. But लालच का कोई अंत थोड़ी है. If there's one thing the British loved more than tea, it was cold, hard cash. While they had created enough supply, there was very little demand for tea in India. Mostly zamindars and royalties enjoyed tea. Common people, not so much. So to create demand within India, so that Indian tea producers could sell to Indian consumers, the East India Tea Company started huge marketing campaigns. लग रहा है ना कि कोई स्टार्टअप का स्टोरी चल रहा है. Tea was given free of cost with milk. It was brewed fresh in front of people. Companies like Brook Bond launched tea carts to entice Indian customers. But फिर भी adoption increase नहीं हो रहा था. When we dug deeper, we found a very interesting insight. इंडिया में ना हमें हर चीज को बॉयल करके लगता है कि वो सेफ हो गया है. और ब्रिटिश तो पहले सिर्फ टी को ब्रू करते थे, पानी में सोक कर देते थे और उसे कंज्यूम कर लेते थे। सो ब्रिटिश को ख्याल आया कि लेट्स मेक दिस सीम सेफर फॉर इंडियंस टू ड्रिंक, एंड तभी से वो चाय उबालना, विच इज बेसिकली बॉइलिंग द टी, केम इनटू एग्जिस्टेंस। इस तरह अपने प्रोडक्ट को लोकल एग्जिस्टिंग बिहेवियर से कंबाइन करके टी का अडॉप्शन इंडिया में बढ़ाया। क्या अमेजिंग हैबिट चेंज जर्नी रही होगी। I wish I was alive at that time just to witness this change in behavior. Soon after, ginger, tulsi and other ingredients were added to the brewing tea and हमने चाय को अपना बना लिया. This put a stop to India's long-standing dislike of tea and gave shape to the idea of different flavors of chai, like my favorite masala chai. So दोस्तों, ये थी टी की इंटरेस्टिंग हिस्ट्री। अभी नजर डालेंगे हम टी के करंट मार्केट एंड फ्यूचर पोटेंशियल पे। India ranks second in terms of production after China, obviously, and Indian tea is loved across the world. According to a 2018 report, 6.37 lakh hectares of land पे tea production होता है इंडिया में। This is almost 9 times the land area of Singapore. असम एंड वेस्ट बंगाल प्रोड्यूस 83% ऑफ इंडियाज टी। जी हाँ, सबसे ज्यादा इधर ही प्रोडक्शन हो जाता है। असम अलोन हैज 800 बिग टी एस्टेट्स एंड मोर देन 1.5 lakh स्मॉल टी गार्डन्स। The biggest tea producing states in the south are Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka, which contribute to the rest 17-20% of the nation's overall production. चार्ट देखो कैसे टी प्रोडक्शन ग्रो हुआ है इंडिया में ओवर द इयर्स। ये जो डिप दिख रहा है दैट इज बिकॉज ऑफ द पैंडेमिक। ये तो हमें मान ही लेना चाहिए दैट टी इन इंडिया इज नॉट जस्ट अ ड्रिंक, इट इज अ लाइफलाइन फॉर ओवर 1.1 crore पीपल इन इंडिया। फ्रॉम एन एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन पर्सपेक्टिव ऑल्सो एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टेटिस्टिक है। विमेन कॉन्स्टिट्यूट 51% ऑफ द टोटल वर्क फोर्स इन द टी इंडस्ट्री। एक चीज बट अभी नोट करना इंपॉर्टेंट है, द लाइवलीहुड्स ऑफ ऑल दीज टी वर्कर्स आर इन डेंजर। चैलेंजेस क्या हैं टी इंडस्ट्री में, देखते हैं। The cost of producing tea has been rising since 1999 due to increasing labor costs. Workers' wages have increased almost 200% in the last decade. On the other hand, prices have only gone up by 30%. Plus, the productivity of tea has also been declining due to climate change. Growing tea is like cooking a delicate recipe. It just needs the right amount of ingredients. According to experts, there are 4 ingredients for tea to rise and shine. A distinct temperature range between 15 to 23 degrees Celsius, relative humidity, well-dispersed rainfall, and a lot of sunshine hours. But climate change is now disrupting this mix of ingredients. With increased temperatures, uneven monsoons, and too much sunlight, climate change is cooking no less than a disaster. Result? Quality of the tea produced is reducing, which is directly impacting our tea exports. Exports in April to November 2022 were at $562 million, while in the same period, April to November 2023, this was at $531 million. But low productivity is not the only reason for low exports. Geopolitical disturbances, especially in the Middle East and Ukraine, and subdued economic conditions in Western Europe and other parts of the world are impacting trade. Iran, which is a major market for India, which contributes to 20% of the total tea exports, is also seeing a decline. This decline in export revenue can mean lower wages and job losses, especially in top tea producing states like Assam and West Bengal. Domestic demand देखें तो एक इंटरेस्टिंग पैटर्न दिखता है। While tea is mostly consumed at tea stalls in India, new age brands are also entering the market with their own offerings. And nahi, they are not offering the regular nukkad wali chai. These brands are brewing new trends in India's tea industry with their tea premixes. अगर आपने इंडिगो का फ्लाइट वगैरह लिया होगा तो आपने वो गिरनार का प्रीमिक्स चाय जरूर ट्राई किया होगा। उसी गिरनार के चाय को प्रीमिक्स बोलते हैं। एंड ये प्रीमिक्स का नीड क्या है? With increasing urbanization and hurried lifestyles, people don't have the time to make themselves a hot cup of tea. So premix solves a lot of their problems. These brands are also betting big on premiumization and customization. With eco-friendly and luxurious packaging, tea boxes are also becoming very popular gifting items. Plus, they are also helping smaller tea estates survive. The ethically sourced leaves from these tea estates And then the use of eco-friendly and sustainable methods of packaging and delivery is creating a new market altogether. Whether we consume tea from the new age brands, local tea stalls, or the magical hands of our moms, one thing is clear. मैंने बोला था ना, इंडिया प्रैक्टिकली रन्स ऑन टी. बिना चाय की चुस्की के इंडिया में दिन नहीं शुरू होता है. So are you team tea or team coffee? Comments में जरूर बताना. If you are team tea, let me know which brand. And if you are team coffee, तो फिर यार कॉफी पे भी एक वीडियो बनाना पड़ेगा आपके लिए, वो भी बता देना. Until next time, bye bye. Share, like, comment सब कर लेना हाँ. Don't miss that. चलो, see you in the next video.